So in the previous episode, we spoke about the state of the world, if you wish, especially from the standpoint of how effective it was in bringing satisfaction, progression, happiness, if you wish, to humanity as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're more or less in agreement. And I to be honest, I mean, I doubt that anyone would disagree. And we might all be Muslims. We might all come from this region called the Middle East. But in general, I personally, my observation is that, you know, when we're talking about the state of misery and bleakness that humanity is going through, we're talking about a human population of probably 98% that is suffering this. We're talking about the victimization on every single level of every human being. We're talking about the dismantling of families, not just for Arabs or Muslims or Asians, or we're talking about humanity as a whole suffering from this state of injustice. When we're talking about authoritarianism, albeit under the guise of liberalism, new liberalism, but still it is authoritarianism of one sort or the other.
Yes.
The question that will definitely be asked, and I'm interested in exploring, is, so what's the alternative? What is it that we are yearning for? What is it that we want? And how, in practical terms, how can you draw people out of consumerism, of superficiality, of the celebrity culture and all of this, and make them convinced that this is to their detriment on every single level, and bring them to a different state of reality? How does this happen?
Yeah, well, in order to try to answer this question, we need to build again, you know, on one of the issues that actually we ended last episode with, which is the control that is being practiced now by the establishment of the United States, and how it could be related historically and on all that. In addition to the context that Dr. Hussein referred to as in terms of ideas, in terms of philosophy, I think historically it's very important to realize that this has accelerated a lot since World War II, when the US emerged as the superpower. Okay, and then it accelerated very heavily, you know, starting by the using of the nuclear bomb, for example, to wipe out Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to declare the US as the only power that has, at that time, that have nuclear power that could silence everybody. Okay, and then it started developing within the United States, and we talk about McCarthyism, for example, which is going after any communist-like or leftist,
anyone who objects.
Yes. Yeah. So this is referred to as the McCarthyism right now, and it developed rapidly. And particularly after the evaporation of the Soviet Union, then the US emerged as the only superpower. The attempt of having this surveillance state started actually then, at that time, during the time of President Reagan. If you recall, people like John Poindexter and Oliver North, you know, which were involved in the famous Iran-Contra. But actually, they started the program that hoped to do what I refer to as, you know, as controlling people and all that. But at that time, technology did not help them. This is the point. But these people, particularly Poindexter, was actually the guardian of those who inherited the project, particularly Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, because it turned out that it is not possible to do this directly through the states because of the democratic processes and the control and everything, and also because of the lack of technological means to achieve it. But so this converted into a private company, a private sector company, which is Palantir, and to escape the governmental control, and also technology facilitated this. So what I'm trying to say is that this is all tied to the hegemony of the United States as the only superpower. Now people are contesting this. People are starting to realize that...
Which people?
All over the world. They are trying, of course they are not successful still, but other countries realize that it is not possible to live in this condition forever. And this is not new in history. All over history, you find empires that others emerged in order to challenge their influence, and the dominant civilization believes that it has the tools in order to have victory over everybody, but this turned out not to be the case. Okay, so what we're talking about is now the project of facing the hegemony of the United States being the only superpower. Now you'd look into who is really capable of doing this, standing against this. Is it a power that is actually based on the same values that the US is implementing? And if you talk about Russia or China, actually the model is not much different than the capitalist world. I mean,
one could even argue that there is no greater capitalist model than Russia today.
Yes, and the way China is being managed and all that. Okay, so this is actually not you cannot consider this contesting the model of the US. So who is qualified for that? I don't want to refer to Dr. Hussein, for example. I refer to Henry Kissinger.
Okay, that's sort of
okay. So that kind of equivalent.
So not Dr. Hussein, Henry Kissinger. That's
that works. No, but I mean, nobody can say that Henry Kissinger is talking on behalf of Islamists or.
Of course,
okay.
Of course.
Kissinger said that in his book, The World Order, that it is very important to face and have victory over political Islam. Why political Islam? Because political Islam is the power. I don't like the term political Islam, by the way, but this is what he used.
Yeah.
Political Islam is the force that is trying to drive Muslims and mobilize Muslims against the model of the West that is actually based on the concept of the nation state and the secular model and all that. And you cannot, the Muslims, if they have something that is really developed, they are the only nation that is capable of facing this other secular model.
Why do you say that?
He said that. I didn't say that.
Oh, he said that. Right.
I'm quoting him. That's why I said that this is not me or Dr. Hussein.
Right.
This is Kissinger. He's saying that the only power that is capable of challenging this model is the Muslim power. And the power and the force that is trying to direct Muslims to do that is what he referred to as political Islam. So the West must defeat political Islam in order to stop this from happening. So the guy, with all his knowledge and experience, he realized that this is the power that is really capable of facing this. Not from a political point of view, but from a civilizational point of view. This is the Muslim nation is the nation that is capable of building up a civilization that is capable of challenging the model that is based on the set of rules we talked about at last episode, and that emerged into the hegemony of the United States at the moment, the way we talked about. Okay, so if this is what others and people like Henry Kissinger realize, that we must go and ask ourselves, so what is in our model that is capable of doing this? And actually, this is not for Muslims. I'm not saying this because this is for the benefit of Muslims. I'm saying this because this is for the benefit of humanity, overall humanity. Is the Islamist model or the Muslim model, is it capable of getting humanity out of the misery that it is suffering right now? In a way that is, because we all know that Quran talked about Rasul as rahmatan lil alamin. not rahmatan
Mercy
for
to all mankind.
Exactly, mercy to all mankind, not mercy for Muslims or those who adopt Islam. So how can this happen? How this rahmah, how this mercy can be achieved?
This was said by Henry Kissinger. Would you, first of all, subscribe to this? Would you accept this? That's one. And second of all, why? I mean, what would be your basis of accepting this as true? For instance, if I was to pose as someone who would forward a counter argument, I would say, well, look at Muslims today. Look at them today. I mean, to be honest, I doubt that anyone would yearn or would look forward to being in the same state that the vast majority of Muslims exist under. So why would what Henry Kissinger said, why would it hold water?
Right. First of all, I have a problem with statements made in the context of civilizational conflict and civilizational struggles, the way that Kissinger sort of described, and also Huntington. When a civilizational experience,
because these people saw it as a zero-sum game.
Exactly.
Clash of
and that's actually not going to help anyone. Yani, when a civilizational experience gets to a point where people like ourselves and like you said, ordinary people all over the world are discussing its very essence, that's not time for thinking about dominance, hegemony, and complete isolation and stuff like that. It's time for dialogue, and I think that, and that goes back to your point of are Muslims really capable of at least enlightenment of any sort? I think there are three levels in which this dialogue needs to take place. There is the level of the core model, the worldview, the basic value systems, and so on. But there is also the level of the structure. The Western civilization has built and maintained and developed an enormous, very elaborate structure controlling and managing every aspect of life. And there is the level of implementations, all kinds of tools and practices and habits and so on and so forth. When you have a civilizational model under question, the way we are dealing with the current civilizational model, you need to address this questioning process on these three levels. A lot of people in the West, my friends and people that I'm following, actually are attacking the second and the third layers, not the worldview. And I don't think that China or Russia, like Dr. Amr said, would be a good example of different worldview. The core worldview is very similar, but then the structure and the implementations and the tools and so on are very different, which is normal. But again, this is not the kind of dialogue that will get us somewhere. So the question is, what can we do now? And I'm not talking only about Muslims. I'm talking about people who are concerned about the state of affairs. I think we need to start this healthy dialogue by going deep down to this core set of values, by dismantling this, conceptually dismantling this structure that's surrounding every aspect of life, and organizing our very daily routines in very specific ways in every aspect, and also look at the implementations. We can do this in one of two ways. I think that's also something to remember. We can do it by people who of conscience, who share these kinds of concerns and so on, opening these kinds of dialogues, activating tools and platforms for these kinds of discussions. To be honest, Muslims haven't been up to that task in general, because we have always been the victim of this civilization in our collective consciousness. So most of the time, our contribution to this dialogue is by criticizing and by sort of complaining about the fact that we are always the victim. Now is the time for Muslim intellects, for Muslim dua, as we call them, callers to the call of Allah, and so on and so forth, by even ordinary people, to start sharing what this means. If you believe in a God-centric worldview, what does that mean for my daily life? What does it mean for my consumption? What does it mean for my relationship with my family? What does it mean for my place in a community? What does it mean for my role in the world as a human being who needs to leave a print after I'm gone, and so forth? These kinds of issues need to be discussed and developed and related and debated with other people, not just always going back to the idea that, because when we fail to develop this kind of dialogue at this level, even if we change realities, that like what we had in the Arab Spring, we fall back on the same structure, because we haven't put the effort to think of a different structure.
It's really a change of face, or a change
exactly. We change faces, we change names,
but it's the same method, same processes,
and we fell into this this controversy that if you actually change the faces and so on, somehow you can bring your worldview and apply it to the structure. It doesn't happen. That structure is, as I think Dr. Amr said in the very beginning, the structure is very much entangled and related to the core values. So you cannot build as a nation state, or particularly in the Arab world, this version of the nation state in the Arab world, and put nice people in it. You know what I mean? Because it's built to control people in certain ways.
The paradigm itself is problematic.
The paradigm is very problematic.
Okay, so but this brings me to ask a question regarding: is it a be-all, end-all? Is it an all-or-nothing game? Meaning, does the entire system need to change for it to work, or can we start implementing this vision somewhere? Let's talk specifically about Syria. Syria is a new reality. The former regime has collapsed. There's a totally new leadership. This is a transformative change of sorts. If you were to advise according to this particular vision, what would you be telling the new leaders of Syria?
Okay. We have to look first to your question about we as Muslims, are we capable to, or are we up to this kind of dialogue? Because our reality is actually not really up to the standards that would attract anybody to adopt this.
True.
So you can theorize about your model, but then the other side would tell you that
your reality defies
your reality
that.
is not like that. Okay, so this is a key point. And of course, the answer for me is that we are definitely not adopting the Muslim model. We are not, or the God-based model. We are not adopting that. We are actually following the Western model, the secular model, and even if we pray and fast and do all that, we are deep inside in our education system and in our daily life. We are living according to that model. It's not just a matter of oppressive regimes or all that, or strong, powerful states and deep state and all that. But we actually, in our daily life, we are, or most of Muslims actually are not really adopted. So the simple answer is that let's go and try our model. Let's try to implement that model and prove that it works in order for others, first of all, in order for us to be up to this dialogue process and to convince others that this is a good way of life. Okay, then comes the value of a place like Syria, actually, because Syria is like starting from the beginning. The new regime received Syria totally destructed and totally in chaos. There is nothing. There's no society, even people who went through the liberated cities, they found total destruction. Actually, I didn't imagine that it's still, whatever happened over the years is still there. Nobody even tried to clean the rubble. And okay.
It was like someone said, it was like the former regime gave up on the country from a long time ago.
Destroyed the country and gave up. Not just gave up.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now the new regime, if I were to advise the new regime, let's try to, I mean, you claim and you say that you are coming out of an Islamist view. So prove to us that you apply it. Okay, how do you apply it? Don't get into the silly arguments of whether or not it's appropriate to shake hands with the German minister of foreign affairs, or to trim your beard or things like that. That actually the other side is trying to push us to shrink all arguments into these trivial matters. Okay, not really looking into real matters. Let's see. Okay, you have, first of all, you have to be really in charge. If you follow the traditional operation, like we did in Egypt, for example, or what people did in Iraq, the traditional democratic way that is adopting the other model, that we have to have a constitution right away, we have to have elections, we have to get representatives, and the election system the way it is fine, no matter of its shortcomings that even the West now is questioning. So let's follow the traditional path that is being recommended in order to prove that we are up to this. We deserve recognition and all that. As a matter of fact, it has been proven for I lived this personally, as someone who was within the system of governance at that time, that this path was actually the path to the chaos that we live in right now. After a deep change that, like what people hoped to be happening in January 2011. It didn't actually, it wasn't completed. Very quickly, we went back to the old model. We didn't allow for the change to take its place. The struggle over political seats and political positions and writing the constitution and all that actually caused a deep division within the society. Okay. Actually, the society in Egypt is traditionally not very, not very divided. It is more or less homogeneous and coherent. Not like in Syria, for example. In Syria, there are real ingredients for divisions. So more effort need to be spent on that. So I would advise the new rulers to concentrate more on the society. First of all, to forget for some time. And I believe the leader of the regime actually talked about that, not talking about elections or constitution, not before 3 or 4 years. I totally agree with that. Actually, I wrote about that. And concentrate on trying to achieve security, but more importantly, try to empower the society. There is no society, so let's look into the civil society. Let's try to have homogeneity within the people, have them work together in projects to build Syria. The government would not be able to fix all the destruction that took place over decades. You need to empower the society in Syria. And the Syrian people are quite clever. They have a lot of resources, particularly the people who actually left Syria. So by doing this, and at the same time concentrate on spreading the real values of Islam, how to be able to live with others within the Muslim community, to absorb everybody and create a social model, a civilized model that would be attractive to others. Successful model with development, but development actually that is concentrated on the human being, not the development that is defined according to the UN standards. No, you need to understand what is needed to develop the human being in terms of education, in terms of healthcare, in terms of
social welfare,
and more importantly the spiritual peace of mind.
How would that sit with Syria's Christians or Alawites? I mean, you saying this?
Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Let's take the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he entered Medina. As a matter of fact, when he entered Medina, Muslims were a minority in Medina. There were Jews, there were atheists, and he started by putting together the rules that governed the society. The whole society was living by the rules that were set by the Muslim leader, Prophet Muhammad, and this did not in any way threaten the freedom of worshipping, the way you adopt or anything like that. There were terms of agreement that kept the society coherent. Actually, others went ahead and went out of this agreement, and that's what facilitated their expulsion from the society. But this is a model. This is a real model. In Islam, it doesn't mean that you have to divert everybody to Islam, and you have to impose on people to live according to your lifestyle. As a matter of fact, the Quran itself says, "La ikrah fi din." You cannot impose adopting the religion on anybody. You have to get convinced yourself. You set the environment to convince people, not to impose this on them. So by creating, people in Syria now have the opportunity of starting from ground zero, and building the society on real Islamist values or Islamic value, let's say. And not to pay attention to trivial matters and issues, and try to achieve unity among all Syrians. All Syrians, regardless of their faith or origin or whatever, Kurds, Arabs, they live within Syria that is for Syrians. Okay, the majority is Sunni Muslims. Okay, we have this, imposes certain rules like any other society, that the majority of which is, for example, Christian or whatever. But embedded in this is the respect of everybody else. To be a good Muslim, you have to respect the others. And we have, thousands of examples.
Could Syria practically, in light of the context within which Syria exists, and, the challenges are immense, whether they be internal or regional or external, could Syria potentially provide a blueprint for this kind of model that we've been discussing? Something that actually shows what could be achieved on every single level, including developmental, including prosperity of all. Could Syria be that blueprint?
Well, first of all, I think it's. I'm just reflecting on our conversation. I think the three of us are extremely happy that we're discussing Syria now in that context.
Absolutely.
Wallahi, mashallah.
Absolutely.
I think we have to.
6 weeks ago, we would have been dreaming.
And it was an incredibly miserable 15 years for everybody, especially our brothers in Syria. So I just like to reflect that this is, mashallah, we're discussing it within a happy mood. Now, taking this into consideration, first of all, back to your original question, Dr. Anas, civilizations or civilizational experiences and journeys don't just disappear, all of a sudden, or completely collapse, and someone completely different sort of appears. There is always this, in history, there's always this process of building a new civilizational model while actually interacting with the existing one. This is how humanity evolved. We all use the experiences of the Romans, the Egyptians, the Syrians over history, and the Western civilization is no exception. So my point is, let's not think of an Islamic model as if it's going to wipe out and start from an imaginable vacuum. There is no vacuum in human life. There is a life that has been created over the last few centuries, and Islamic values and Islamic models and worldviews will have to deal with this reality, and will have to bring up the best in Islamic thought to deal with this reality, not the reality that existed some time ago, or the reality that we're hoping for. We need to deal with our life. So that's number one. Number two, so as not also to burden our brothers in Syria with more than, the second rule in civilizational building and state building and so on is to know exactly what your context is. You need to know also the balance of power. You need to know what can be done. Syria alone, Egypt alone, wherever, is not going to be able to produce this magic solution for the Islamic world. It's going to deal with very, very real problems of the nature that Dr. Amr and yourself were debating and discussing, and try to bring about as much change as you can, knowing the limitations, knowing that the Islamic solution is by definition an ummah solution, a very deep level kind of solution that no one can do alone. So what can Syria achieve for this drive and for this journey is huge, but within reasonable expectations. The entire Arab Spring at the time when it took place, like Dr. Amr, we mismanaged it in many ways, but we also had some dreams about what the Arab Spring can achieve that proved at the end of the day impractical. And we came down feeling defeated and feeling very lacking in the whole experience. I think we need to be modest and realistic a little bit with what's going on the ground, and at the same time very ambitious from a civilizational point of view. And these two streams, the caution and the ambition on the ground with the right kinds of people dealing with the situations they are dealing with and so on, and others around Syria learning from these experiences and contributing to it and so on, will be a building block in the direction of...
What are the most important components of the kind, what you're speaking of, if I may offer it my term, and please do disagree if you wish. It's a renaissance of sorts. We're talking about a new coming, and not a new coming of Islam per se, but a new coming for humanity through the prism and through the value set that Islam proposes. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct.
What are the main components of this renaissance?
I think what, if I may choose one element and suggest that this could be the main focus of the Syrian experience that we're watching now, I think it has to do with utilizing and using this relatively fluid reality that is taking place now to change the real nature of relation and equation between the state and society, because that's at the core of the Islamic experience. The Islamic experience will never live with an ummah or with a society that is being deprived from all its powers, and the powers are concentrated in the state. So it disturbs me sometimes the last few weeks when I read all these kinds of accounts of Syria in terms of the new leadership. Actually, the question is, what will the Syrian people do? What will the society evolve into? How will it use this opportunity of this relative fluidity, or relative, let's not say fluidity, let's say opportunity to change, to bring about a new balance between the society and you look at the state. You look at the Islamic experience. I always am fascinated by one aspect of the civilization journey of Muslims, which is al-awqaf, the endowments. The endowments have actually been one genius kind of a solution.
Absolutely.
In terms of, the state, we have problems with the state. We have problems with concentration of power. We have problems with the ruling moving from the Khilafat phase to the kingdom phase and so on. But the society, the ummah,
and the components of
course,
society
kept its vitality
and its independence.
Complete independence.
Absolutely.
It forced its will, if you will, as a Muslim nation, regardless of the power of the state, and even regardless of the power of those who donated the money to begin with. It's a brilliant solution to keep the society vital and to keep it in charge, because that's how Islam works, by the way. If the people are in charge, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always addressed us as saying يا أيها الذين آمنوا. In the Quran, he didn't say يا أيها الذين حكموا الذين آمنوا أو يا أيها those who rule the believers, or those who are the intellects among the believers. No, the orders, the instructions, the appeal is always to those who believe. So the Muslim society, with its ranks closing and becoming coherent and so on and so forth, is the one that carries the mission of Islam, and the states are designed to facilitate that process, not the other way around. So if there is one thing that I think that the Syrian experience now can provide us with, is one attempt, at least one formula by which this can happen. I think also that's what Dr. Amr said. Focus on building the
Actually, what kept and what drive the Islamic civilization over centuries is this particular aspect. The Islamic history is full of conflicts and struggles on top, Dawla Umayyah, Abbasiyya, and then different Dawla and different Emirates, and a lot of struggles within families and between families and all that. But that was confined at the top layers, while at the same time the society was quite healthy, taking care of its own affairs using the waqf mechanism, and also sadaqah and zakah and all that, okay, in order to take care of all functions, even judiciary, actually. Of course, in addition to education and healthcare and all that. So people actually, what people needed from the rulers is the overall protection of the state, which is the national security in modern terms. Yes. And making sure that the society is safe and in running smoothly. Okay, and this is the opportunity that the new people in Syria are having right now, is to try to strike the balance between, or to adopt an Islamic model, is exactly what Dr. Hussein talked about, and what I also refer to, which is empowering the society. Let's try as new rulers of Syria to concentrate on matters of national security and external threats, and overall provision of resources for the big infrastructure and all that, and then make all efforts in terms of legislation, in terms of freedoms, in terms of organization of NGOs and all that, to facilitate the work of and encourage actually the work of the society. And this would benefit the government as well, because the government, the traditional viewpoint, particularly in our area, is that the government is our father and mother that has to be taken of all of our affairs, and from the moment we are born until we die, and even after we die. Okay, so this is the point, which this is very far from the Islamic scholar. And actually the way the new systems and regimes were imposed on the Muslim societies over the last maybe 200 years or more was exactly this, trying to take the power away from the society and gradually giving it to rulers. And it was very easy to control these rulers, so that everything was destroyed at the end of the day. So now we need what we need is to for the societies to regain this power. And there is an opportunity in Syria if they believe that applying Islam is to control things and impose our views and all that. Unfortunately, this is not the Islamic model that we are hoping to present to the whole world.
I think there is also, there's also another angle in Syria that is unique to the Syrian experience. If you think about it, there is over 8 million people who have fled the country and lived
at least. Some say about 12, 13, yes.
Let's say on the average of 10 million people who lived in different kinds of contexts. Now, this provides, by the way, a unique opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because rather than only looking internal as to what we will do with Syria. We have people who now have connections in all corners of the world.
Experiences, qualifications, languages.
If you want to have a civilizational dialogue, these would be perfect ambassadors.
These are the ambassadors.
You know, and that would provide also a healthy balance between focusing into.
I mean, you mentioned this, and this is fascinating because I'm constantly thinking of something which now you've sort of shed light on, and that is those millions who are returning from America, from Canada, from Europe, from Russia, from wherever they fled to. These people also are equipped, besides their own personal qualifications and traits and skills and know-hows, but they also have seen and observed the shortcomings of the dominant systems, the dominant realities, the dominant, if you wish, civilization. Let's talk in civilizational terms. So in a way, you have sufficient resources to call for a rebuild according to different means. Now, I was taken. I just
build on this. This could be taken further step by not just providing this as a means of dialogue or conveying experience, but actually participation together. Yani, those people who lived outside of Syria, they also have connections, a lot of connections all over the world.
True.
So they could bring this, not just the ideas, they bring the people, they bring the organizations, they start to form partnerships to participate in the reconstruction of Syria, in reconstruction in general terms, in so many ways. It's not just bringing capital but bringing even the people, and this would be the perfect way to actually live the build up of this new model, rather than talk about it. It's being lived together, you know, and rather than leaving the society vulnerable to outside external interferences that are not really related to the Syrian society.
An opportunity that I'm thinking of, an opportunity of this, and I like the way, Dr. Hussein, that you described or illustrated this civilizational handover, as though it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a total collapse and then something rises from the ashes. It doesn't happen like that. It's a continuation. It's a form of handover when one has expired for a variety of reasons, whether internal or otherwise, and another is emerging. And to be honest, I mean, that immediately led me to think of what we're seeing today. And in countries such as the United States, such as the United Kingdom, Europe by large, that are the bastions of this Western liberal, neoliberal civilization that we have in our midst and that is hegemonic and that is ruling, in how there is this capitulation on the very basics of that civilization. I mean, only recently we were reading how the American Congress was debating how to prosecute members of the ICC because of the warrants they brought against Netanyahu and others. And then we have others talking about international law in derogatory terms, because international law describes what is happening, what has been happening in Gaza for 15 months as a genocide, and so on, and the sorts of reversal that we're seeing in terms of laws. So that, for instance, in the United Kingdom, we're seeing more and more restrictions on expression. We're seeing more and more restrictions on demonstrations, and this is sort of, when you mention this one withering and another rising, it seems that this is an opportune moment.
Yes,
it is. And a lot of times, unfortunately, when people look at changes in history, they focus on the rise and fall of countries, of political systems. They miss this handover, because like I said, yeah, a country can fall, but its legacy,
Yes.
doesn't disappear. It continues on with others who have lived it, experienced it, and so on. And now, as they are building on a different worldview, they are internalizing a lot of the experiences that have taken place over centuries, but within a different worldview. They of course clearly let go of certain practices and certain systems and certain ways of life and implement new ones. But that doesn't necessarily mean at any point in time that you sort of ignore the reality that has been created over centuries. When you focus only on this sudden, the collapse of the Soviet Union and stuff like that, you think of these big events and forget what's behind them in terms of cultural, social, economic, and so on. It's a huge problem. And speaking of economics, by the way, that's also a subject that is not in our Muslim circles is not given enough attention, because whatever we do, let's say the Syrian case, the Egyptian case, when we were involved and so on, there was very, very little debate, by the way, which I think is very unhealthy, as to the fundamentals of the economic system that we're trying to build. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to build a new liberal economy in Egypt, and I'm sure that will be the case now in Syria. The pressure will be to build a version, at least, of this new liberal system somehow, because the argument will be you cannot live alone. You cannot live outside the world economy, which I understand. But at least there should be an attempt to build the building stones and the milestones of an Islamic perspective on economics, which, by the way, is very, very different than the new liberal one. The
Absolutely.
Syrian experience, by the way, have this...
By the way, the discussions on this happening in Latin America particularly are extremely progressive. And now recognizing elements and components of what we call the international order, such as the IMF, the World Bank, as not boosters to world economy, but rather as dictators on things that go down as much as educational systems, for instance, as syllabuses at school, and behavior and the expression in terms of faith and belief and the like. So that kind of debate is already taking place. It just needs some sort of framing,
right,
so that it is led.
And particularly for Syria, I personally believe that there is a very good opportunity, simply because of the nature of the Syrian people. In terms of the economic model, rather than having to concentrate the wealth among very few people, the new liberal model, the Islamic concept is to distribute wealth, not just to give people money, but to empower them and give them opportunities to be businessmen and build small and medium businesses, and do that, so that the wealth is evenly distributed among the society. The Syrian people particularly, they living with them for years right now, they have very good abilities in starting businesses and doing work, and
they are themselves wherever they went.
Yeah, exactly, and they are very powerful. They can, and they are independent, and they don't like to live as employees, working for others forever, to be entrepreneurs, and so this is the kind of model. Rather than having the model of Asma al-Assad and her brothers who control the whole economy, now you have the opportunity to spread the wealth among the society, starting from zero, building the wealth that is going to be built in Syria by the people who are qualified for that. So this probably may not really work that effectively in a country like Egypt, where people are used to working, as employees, and they like to work for the government and all that. This is not the case for Syria, which provides a very good opportunity for for the future as part as of the development according to an independent model, which is the economy.
I think it's also, if I build on what Dr. Amr is saying, part of the advice we can give our brothers in Syria is when you try to gauge your progress, don't use, the IMF and the World Bank and the United Nations developmental indices without examining them, according to what you're trying to do. In a country like Egypt, by the way, before the coup, we had a really significant informal society, informal economy. And it provided a safety net for a lot of Egyptians against the cruelty of the state.
When you're saying informal, are you saying a black market of sorts?
Well, it's not really black in the sense, it's just outside of the control of the central bodies.
Okay.
But now after the coup, they tried to go after every aspect of informal society to tax it and document it and control it. That again takes away from this vitality of the society and reinforces this idea of, okay, let's either, in that case, let's be employees somewhere with a government that's expanding to a very unhealthy measures in an economy that doesn't have any vision. That's Egypt, unfortunately. But back to Syria, I think if we can advise our brothers in Syria, there needs to be calm and quiet and deep debate as to what kinds of indicators should we be looking at, because this is one of them. If you have more people returning with this kind of initiatives, and if they start linking these initiatives in what we call value chains within an economic model that's outside of the control of the central bodies and so on, that's very healthy way of building an economy. It's not going to be an Islamic economy in the sense, because again, let's just be realistic. An Islamic economy would need a very different infrastructure that does not exist, and it's not fair to ask the Syrian people to build it. But within the existing infrastructure, you can start building these pillars of an independent economy on part of the society that's very capable of doing that, because of the characteristics that Dr. Amr mentioned. We are, from my childhood, I have this experience. Even in my own home in Egypt, we had Syrian neighbors, and they were entrepreneurs. All of them were entrepreneurs by definition. We could easily see the difference between their inclination and the inclination of a typical Egyptian like myself, who wanted to go to university, get a degree, and so on and so forth.
And that's actually to the benefit of the government itself. As a matter of fact, it's up to the government to define the way it looks to the society. If the government's intention, the current government's intention, is to go again to the authoritarian model, okay, they would go and control the economic means and all that. But if they are really trying to implement what they say they believe in, this would establish a huge economic power that would take a big burden from the government. The government doesn't have to spend. In one of the interviews by the leader given by the leader of the current regime in Syria, he said that I think Syria needs something like $500 billion for something like that. If he believes that the government needs $500 billion in order to reconstruct Syria, this is impossible to achieve.
Of course.
And it would put Syria under the mercy of whoever is going to give this money, and the government will fail eventually. But if they gave this power to the society, and they just take care of the function that they really should concentrate on, this would be a success for them and for the Syria as a whole.